All right, welcome back to our EOC review. We're going to be talking about quadratic functions. So the first part of quadratic functions we talked about was the attributes of quadratics. So the thing we have to remember is that standard form of a quadratic looks like this. So it's f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. A graph of a quadratic is called a parabola. That's that U shape. And then here it says we got some key features. So we're looking at A, okay? And A is going to be the y-intercept, okay? And that is where it crosses the y-axis, okay? And so you can see there that it's crossing the y-axis right there at that point. So the next one is the x-intercepts. And notice that that is plural because there will sometimes be one or two. Or we might call them zeros or roots or solutions. Remember, it can be called all of those things. And that's where it crosses the x-axis. So this would be here and here. So we're going to label both of those B. The vertex is the next one. And it says the maximum or minimum point. On this graph, we're looking at a minimum point because it's the lowest point on the graph. So that is our C. And then this line that goes down the middle that divides it in half, that's our axis of symmetry. So we're going to put D there for axis of symmetry. It's a vertical line that passes through the vertex, and the formula to find that is the opposite of b over 2a. Remember, x equals the opposite of b over 2a. That's going to give you the axis of symmetry or the x value of your vertex because they're both the same thing. Translating quadratics. So this first one says f of x plus d. We've talked about that with linear functions already in our EOC review. Remember that if it's outside the parentheses, that's a vertical shift. So this shifts it vertically. Okay. And so f of x plus d is going to go up, and f of x minus d would go down. Any shift, any change that happens inside the parentheses, we talked about that as horizontal. So this is going to shift it horizontally. And so f of x minus c here, remember it's the opposite. So you're going to the positive c, which would be going to the right side. And when you're adding c, you go left. All right. And we're going to talk about dilating quadratics and what that means. So that's changing the shape. So translations change the location. Okay, so this is changes the location. Dilations are going to change the shape. It's going to make it more narrow or wider. So a of f of x, a times f of x, dilates f of x vertically because that change is happening outside the parentheses. Okay, so when you have the absolute value of a, meaning that the negative is a reflection, we don't care about that when we're talking about dilations, but if that a value is bigger than 1, it stretches or becomes more narrow. Okay, and then if that value is between 0 and 1, so if it's a fraction or a decimal that's less than 1, it compresses, which is, it gets wider. Okay. And then f of b of x, so that dilates it horizontally. And again, if that b value, because it's happening inside the parentheses, right? That's the difference. If that b value is greater than 1, it's going to make it more narrow. And if that b value is between 0 and 1, it's going to make it wider. So same changes, okay? Domain is what, and range is what we're going to talk about now. So my x values are my domain, possible X values is my domain. Range is the possible Y values. Domain we read from left to right. So this is domain here. And range we're going to read from bottom to top. Okay, vertex form is when you have a x minus h squared plus k. And so that h and k is your vertex. HK is your vertex. And the sign of A determines which way the parabola opens. So if A is negative, it's going to open down. That's a reflection. And if A is positive, it's going to open up. So it says give the vertex and the maximum or minimum of each function. Okay, so here our H value is 5. And remember, inside the parentheses is the opposite. So since it's a -5 inside the parentheses, when we pull it out, it's a +5. And then our K value is 2. So our vertex is 5, 2. My A value out here would be 1. It's positive because there's nothing out there. So that's going to have a minimum because the graph is going to, it's going to open up and it's going to have, your vertex would be 5, 2. So it's going to have a minimum of 2 because that's your Y value of the vertex. And then here, your vertex, so we're looking at our H value and our K value. Remember, H we have to make the opposite. So since that's +6, we're going to make that -6. And then it'll say -4 for K. This A value is -3, so this one's going to open down. And our vertex is -6, -4. So that's going to have a maximum point, or maximum of -4, because that's our Y value of our vertex.